In this pair programming session today, we're going to demonstrate how you can create internationalization for your Next.js project. And for that, we're going to be using react-intl as a library to internationalize the Next.js project. So Eric, let's get started.
Let's get started, Anil. So the first thing we're going to do is install our react-intl library, aren't we?
Yes. So I see that, Eric, you're already in a Git pod. So you are using a sample or a boilerplate Next.js app already kind of prepared on your Git pod. So, okay.
All right.
It's good. So you installed the package react-intl. So this is the package we're going to be using to internationalize the Next.js project. Okay. Can we also run the Next.js project so that we can see what's the boilerplate application looks like?
Okay, so npm start. Is that what I mean by run?
Yeah, ideally we should also do install, but if it's already done, we can ignore
We haven't done that yet. Let's run install.
Okay, that looks good. Okay, we couldn't find the production build template. Try building next build. We need to run the next build.
Okay. Let me get that real quick. I don't see it here. Is it just npx?
Yeah, you can also use a dev. You can also use a dev next npm start dev. No, I think it's a npm run dev. We can also use npm run dev. Yes, so we got this is opening. Yes,
awesome.
This is good. And I think we can delete most of these content. So maybe we can go to the pages. Index. Yeah, we can keep the head. And yeah, I think we can remove all the starting from line number 19. And also, yeah, I think this is, we can keep the footer just for the reference, and up till the line number 46, we can just remove them. So we can see, yeah, so at least skip on, okay. Okay, so this is good. Okay, and after this, so let's see what could be the next step. We will need to install react-intl. We installed that. We also need to create some local language files. So maybe we can create a folder on the project. So we can create a folder with maybe 2 languages or 3 languages.
On the root of the project?
Yes.
What's the title going to be of this folder?
Lang, for example, you can also call locales or lang. I would just keep it, yeah, I think lang and en.json. If you want to use the Spanish, es.json, and maybe if you want to keep the Arabic or some other language, er.json. Yes, exactly.
Let's do that. I like having an Arabic example for right to left, and Spanish because I can read it and I know if it's correct or if it's incorrect.
That's great. And now, yeah, you can also create some sample key values, or you can also to make it faster, or yeah, I think you can just say come to
our tutorial and I'll save there. Actually, I want to put this in the English one, not the Arabic. And then eventually, once we translate this content, we'll propagate it into our er.json, es.json in its translated form. So we'll focus on en.json for now. Okay, what's next?
So we're going to be using browser navigator API. What that means is the modern browsers are capable of detecting we can detect what is the default language of the browser. For example, if your browser might be running a default language as English US. So if you open the console of this project or this browser console, you can see if you type navigator.language, you're gonna get your what is your default language. You can actually run and open a new tab or maybe open this URL, and just for demonstrating purpose, we can see that you open a new tab and paste this and open the developer tools. Just click enter and open the developer tool, inspect, yes. And if you go to the console and if you type navigator.language, it's a window object on the, yeah, exactly, on that place. No, here, if you type here, the navigator.language here on that, yeah, .language, and you see here, this is your browser default language. And we can take advantage of this capability of browser, and we can show a specific page based on the user's default. So for that, we need some code in our repository, in our project. So let's go and add that code snippet. Let's go to that. Yeah, in the index.js, let's try to import our files which we added now. For that, you can also take a look into the article just to make it quicker, or you can also add import English. Yeah, exactly. This is the
okay. Here we are.
Yeah, and also the about 3 lines which copies the language files. Exactly this one. Yeah, exactly.
I'm going to copy all of this and then modify it to fit the project we're working on.
Cool.
So into provider, we don't have German. We're going to make changes to Spanish.
Exactly.
lang.es, JSON.
And the good thing is now we are importing this Intel provider. We're going to be using this Intel provider object later in the. We just imported here the translation files which Eric created as a JSON files. As you can see here, we are just importing it to this file. And now on the line number 11 and 8, we're just making English as EN as a default one. And we are also checking what is the navigator.language. That's what we looked 1 minute ago. And we are just checking it out. If there is nothing, we are just having the EN as a default one. And here, we are just taking, depending on the locale value, what is the locale value? If it's AR, we're just taking the Arabic. If it's we are taking the Spanish. And by default, we're going to be taking English. Yeah, please go ahead, Eric.
All right, so I'm going to open up the document to see what our next step is.
And you can see on the document that we have Intel provider. So this is like one of the criteria we need to kind of put as an outer HTML to make our content internationalizable. So this is one of the requirement, and where all the HTML or JSX code should be inside this Intel provider. So we can add this
okay, let's add it.
Our code. And I think in the line number 20, after the line number 22, we can add that. Yes, exactly.
We have to wrap everything within Intel provider.
Exactly.
Look, all the way to the end of the footer.
No, I think even below. Even below. I think before the closing.
Before the closing div here.
Yeah, I think the div. I think even before that, like even after that, after line number 195. Yes, exactly. I think we need to just exactly.
Oh,
I think there was auto suggestion. We could have just, yes, exactly. Awesome. Okay, what was the issue? Module parser failed. Maybe you need to reload it. Maybe you can reload it.
okay, I'll reload. There we go.
Okay, cool. It's back again. And if you look at the article again, what else we are doing? We have this. Okay, we can move to the next step. We can move to the next step of the article. Adding translations. We did this step. We can skip this adding translation because you already added it for one. And yeah, now we can go to the declaring messages. So we also need to import this format message. And we also need to this default message.
Let's import formatted message at the top.
Yeah. What we can do is on line number 6, Eric, if you can go back, we can actually, we don't need to add line number 6, just copy the format message. Yeah, exactly. You're right. So
okay.
Yeah, we can get rid of that. And yeah, then you can copy the format message code. Yeah, exactly. And now
we're gonna put that within our body.
Just put it in the, yeah, somewhere in the,
we'll put it after git pod. So we'll go here.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So first thing we can see that learn Next.js, and here you can change our ID. This ID should be referencing to our JSON key. We don't have app.content, but Eric created something like a key one. So we can use this key one, and we should get that message. And we can also change the default message if you want.
The English version.
You see here, it's already reflecting. It's already reflecting. Yeah. Welcome to our tutorial. This is awesome. So
the default message exists in case the locale can't be fetched, right? If the navigator doesn't even, we don't support that languages, the default message is what's provided. Exactly.
You said right. So we already have our first hello world part where we have the internationalized code where we are rendering the key one content to the h1, and we just initialized the react-intl. We just imported the 3 languages we define, and we just detected the language, or here in this case, it's like we're just explicitly taking the messages from the English. And what is the locale? Locale will be in en, depending on as a default. Okay, we can go to the next step.
Let's take one moment, Anil, to make a commit to our repository.
Good point.
So I'll add all the stage, all the files.
You can also use the shortcut. Eric, if you look at here, again, I will let you choose whatever makes you best.
Just let's commit here from the terminal. And what have we done so far? We've configured coding environment. I guess we could call it that. Initial installed intl, import langs, and format message. So we've done all of these things. I wonder if that commit message is too long. We'll see.
This
looks like it worked. Awesome.
Cool. Awesome.
Okay. What's the next step, Anil?
We can see what can we do after this. We can also try to get into some of the language switches or adding translation. So we added that and declaring messages. I'm just taking a look into the article. Let me see what could be the next step. Yeah, the next step could be that we hard-coded the English. We hard-coded the English here as a language. Now let's make this dynamic. Let's make this, instead of English, it can be anything. It can handle any language. So if you go to the article, and you're going to see here, it's the same piece of code. It's the same piece of code. And now if you scroll down a bit, and here in this area, you see that instead of English, we just have to update it to lang.
I see that. Okay.
And now let's try to see, and you can change that to lang, and let's see what we're gonna get. You can save it and refresh this. Okay, that's should be working, but just for testing purpose, is there a way we can switch to Spanish, or we can make this as a ES as a default? The lang as ES, or we can define the language as ES. Yeah, just wanted to see what should be the.
We don't have a translation yet to welcome to our tutorial, so we might be saying our default message, but I can add this translation right now. So it is key1. Okay, so now we have a Spanish key and we've switched the language.
And refresh.
Hit refresh. I've refreshed here, and let me make sure I save this. I have saved it. Okay, did not change this time.
Okay.
To test it, we can set this message as, what was it before?
We can also see, yeah, it's in English. It's there. We can also, Eric, just for the, just we are getting the, oh, I think it was, there's a E here. I think we don't need that.
And I spelled bienvenidos wrong, but that's beyond the point. Okay, what can we do now?
I think we are, looks like this navigator language is detected, and it's not matching any of those. Your browser is not matching any of these. So that's why it's always falling into English, and that's why you're getting the English. So that's the thing. And if you change your browser language to Spanish, you're gonna get a Spanish message. And we just have to make this lang. You're gonna make it to lang.
Okay.
And yeah, so, and if you open a new tab, or this tab, the create new app tab, and if you go to your browser settings, and if you change the language, preferred language to be Spanish, I think you should be getting the preferred language as a Spanish. Languages. Yeah, I think you can add new language. So you can make that as a top. You can make that as a top.
Look to the top. Use Google Translate. No.
Okay.
How do I save? I think it saves.
I think it's saved automatically. So if you go to the create new app, and now if you reload this, you see
there,
here
it changed.
This is like now, and now if you check the navigator language, you should get ES because that's your default language now. And let's see what it gets to you. And now it knows that your default user language is now, your top preference is in Spanish. So that's why it now shows your content in a Spanish. And so it's more a personalization. So it's working. It's working. So we can, if you want, we can switch back to English so that we can continue proceeding on the
Let's do that. Settings. And that's interesting. Even though the navigator is deciding my language for me, that's not necessarily best practice, because someone could buy a computer in Spain. Their setting can be in Spanish, but perhaps they speak Arabic and that's their mother tongue, and they want to consume content in Arabic despite the settings of their browser. So we want to always give users the option to switch languages instead of assuming which languages they'd like to consume content in. And I imagine now that the language switcher is a step that we'll be diving into soon.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've changed my language. Let me refresh this to make sure it worked. And it's back in English. Okay.
Cool. That's cool. And now maybe we can also do a little bit of adding arguments, a placeholder. We can show a simple example of, we saw a hello world example, it's working. But let's take a look into a little bit more advanced example. Like we can have a placeholder. So if you go to the article, if you go to the article, we can add a
article.
We can pass some, yeah, if you scroll down a little bit more, yeah, adding argument and placeholder. So maybe we can have a copy this, or you can also choose whatever.
All right. I'm gonna put this in my en.json page. Save. Yeah. So it's app.channel.plug. And this is the formatted message you provide in this document. So the key ID is app.channel.plug. The English is tutorial brought to you by Localize. And then we pass that placeholder value in.
Yeah.
Blog name is Localize.
Yeah, this can be anything. It can be Localize, or it can be Eric's blog, or it can be Anil's blog. That's a dynamic value they can pass. And we can also create one more H2 or paragraph, or we can also create a paragraph just to demonstrate. And you see here, it's a localize. And if you change value to localize to something else, or a demo or something, so that people can see it's working, it's not just only localized. If you can change the value, that would be great. A blog name to demo. Okay, yeah, it's working. As you can see here, this is a dynamic value which can be passed. Imagine this is where it's really useful. Imagine case where you wanted to welcome your user with their name, and you can say welcome Eric, welcome Anil, and your name is going to be a dynamic, and you can customize the dynamic values which you get it from your database or from your content management system. So this is like really helpful way to internationalize your dynamic values.
Now, Anil, I see within the default message, we don't pass this dynamic value into the default message. Is that something we would want to do?
Yeah, I think we can always, it's always tricky. Yeah, I think it's always good to have a fallback. It's always good to have a fallback. But yeah, like you said, it's good to have a fallback. So when you don't have the value, you get that. For example, you don't get the value, so it just appends to a default value. Or when you don't support the language or things like that, where it doesn't look like a really unusable, but still it gives you some feedback to users. Or hey, tutorial is brought to you by, it's a welcome, just only welcome, not including the username. Having some default, thinking about the default one. Yes, I think having a default edge case would be really nice. Good point.
And we want the default message to rely on, just to provide if a language isn't provided within our localization efforts, we wanted to provide that default language of English, but still that user's name or that blog name should appear according to the content that needs to be injected into it. So
okay, that sounds great. That sounds great. Eric, how about going to the next little bit more, another example where we can control the, like, for example, yeah, you can also copy this one, app.header example, and we can also display, we can also have a little bit more complicated customization, and we can show how we want, and you just have to copy the format message and place it, maybe place it on the paragraph, just to demonstrate paragraph. And
there you go. So edit source app.js and save to reload.
Yeah, so you can see that here, the coding part, what you're passing, the file name, source and app, it's actually wrapping inside the code HTML and the word you're passing, and you can customize your HTML, how your HTML wanted to look like. This you can decide. And the example we talked about in the previous example, the value welcome and with a username, you can also make this more customizable. You can say the name, username, and the name, and you can have the word as like more like a function, and you can have a HTML tag which are more stronger or which are more stylistic, where your name is highlighted or italic or underlined. So something where you can have more customizable output, the HTML output you can decide. That also possible with this react-intl. Yeah, this is one other possibility.
I want to open the en.json and just fix one thing that's bugging me. We have JS twice.
Okay.
So here we see edit code, file name code, and save to reload.
Okay, yeah, this is good. And yeah, I think this is great. I think now we saw how we can, so far we saw how we can create an internationalization of the code. And we also saw some advanced examples like dynamically getting the values and displaying them. But now how about the one you talked about, language switcher? That's where people wanted to create a page, and like the example you explained, I'm an Arabic user where I'm on a Spanish browser, but I would like to read a content on Arabic. How about we build a simple locale selector?
All right. The baby next door is crying. So let me know if you can hear the baby in the audio now. It's quite loud. Must be a big baby. So adding a wrapper.
Yeah.
Import React use state from React, rendering the language switcher.
Yeah. So for this, we're going to be using the use state. So we need to use the use state, and of course we can get that. Yeah, you can copy and import the dependency. The use state we're going to be using for the state management, and React, which is of course it's this Next.js is based on React, and I think it's explaining that how it should look like. And yeah, I think we also need a context. I think it's
I don't think we have that. Okay.
We don't have the context, so it's important to have a context so that we define that context exactly. And let's see how we're going to be using the context later. And if you scroll down, and this is where, if you can stop, and okay, so here is the logic where I think you can copy the code from here till here. This code we can copy, and we can paste it in our
immediately, where was it? It was immediately
I
after
think
the
we
exporting.
need to, I think after the line 23.
And before return. Okay.
Okay, so
I need
we
to
can quickly
first
go.
make.
We can quickly look into the things, what these are. I think the line number 24 and 25 is a typical syntax for your use state, the React. Basically, we created two variables, locale and message, and we're going to be setting some default values. And we're going to be using set locale and set messages method or a function to set these values on the fly. And select language is the function. We're going to be creating a button or a handler later, and based on that, you see here there's a select locale. We're going to be setting the select locale, and we're also going to be making based on the new locale, if it's a English, if it's a Spanish, if it's Arabic, we just have to fit these. Again, it can also be like this, Arabic, and default can be English, but let's keep it like this. Okay, let's take a look into the article, how they are using those messages. Yeah, here you see here, we defined a context. We define a context. For the context, we need to pass the value, a locale, and a select language. So you can copy this piece. And also, Eric, you can also copy the next line as well.
Okay, let me go back and copy the next line. The Intel provider line.
Yes.
We already have that one.
Yes, but now we are passing the messages, and the messages, the language. Instead of passing the language, we are passing the message. And we need to close the context provider block at the end. Yeah, and the line after line number 227. Cool. And yeah, I think we are now prepared for the language switcher, but now we need to add a code to language switcher, a select. So if we go to the article, and we should scroll down. If we scroll down a bit.
This is the end of it, the article.
Oh, okay. Then I think we might have skipped the select option. Okay, rendering the language switcher. Okay, I'm gonna be selecting we need to render the language switcher. Can you go to the headline, render the language switcher? Switcher. Yes.
Rendering the language switcher, here it is.
Yes, so here's the code we need to copy. So we can just copy this code, and it's basically a select input select component, and you can go to the code again, and maybe you can put it below the paragraph, in another paragraph below, a little bit below, like, yeah, I would put it maybe after line number 68. 68, yeah, maybe you can create a div, simple div, or paragraph, doesn't matter. Okay, for this example. Okay, now what we did, we have a language now, and of course, I think you wanted to change it to Spanish and Arabic, Spanish, and change it to ES. And this is good. And the thing is, like, what we did is the magic. We're now connecting everything. You see here on change, we are listening. We're connecting to select language. We define the select language, what should do. And we have the locale. The current locale will be the locale. For example, now it's the English. And we have 3 options. When Eric selects a Spanish, this method will be called. The select language method will be called. Eric, if you can go to the select language.
Sure.
No, if you go in this here, we define the function on the beginning. In the beginning, in top of the, yes, here, select language, line number 26.
There it is.
It takes the value, a new locale value, that will be the Spanish, and it's gonna check the logic, and it's based on the new locale value. If it's a en, es, or Arabic, we're gonna set the current message as English, Spanish, or Arabic, and these values going to be changed based on our selector input. And we are using context provider. The context provider, we are passing the value, the language, and the message, and that is helping us to set this whole page to act like now it's in English, now it's in Spanish, now it's in Arabic. So that way we can provide flexibility for user to choose what language they need. Yeah, I think it's working great. Anything to add, Eric, here?
I see it's working well. I can also see where our default message is shown in Spanish for this line, because we've lost the attribute, the coding attribute no longer has that cool styling. And in Arabic, we don't have any translations yet. So all of the default messages are being displayed.
Wow.
I know we're running out of time for today, Anil, but formatting numbers would be something to add to this project. That formatting numbers and dates is always fun for internationalization.
Yeah, maybe we can cover in our next session. And maybe you want to commit this change so that we know that it's a date switcher. And we can continue working on our next session using this as a base. And we can keep adding the date formats and other options. Yeah, good to see that you are using the Visual Studio Code, the UI for Git commit. That's great. And Eric, you want to summarize what we did?
I'm trying to in this git commit. So after we finished the last commit, this one, we added some different formatted messages. We added a formatted messages that has internal stylings with the code, and we added a formatted message that injected a placeholder. So, and that placeholder was just a name. It was the blog name. But this we use for many different use cases. After using these different formatted messengers, we configured our app to support a language switcher, and created one. How was that summary, Anil? Did I get everything in the most high level possible?
Yes, that's great. Yes, you put it in a nice way. So in a nutshell, we tried an empty Next.js project, and we added a internationalization to some of the strings and for the couple of languages. And we also showed some of the placeholders and dynamic values. And Eric finally showed us the language switcher, how we can provide a user a capability to switch language so that end user can see the content consumed there on their own desired language. So that's a great personalization feature as a great experience we can provide to our end customer. So thank you very much, Eric.
I know there are some topics we didn't cover, like pluralization or formatting numbers, but if I remember correctly, you've added to the localized blog a post about i18n, react-intl, where you do cover those topics.
Yeah, yeah, we're gonna be, and also we're gonna be doing the advanced cases in the future episodes.
Oh, okay.
So I'm looking forward for that. Thank you.